Many Magic the Gathering players ask the question, is it worth it to buy a Modern Horizons 3 Commander deck? Certainly a relevant question when the premium versions of some of these decks are going for over $400, but more on that in a moment. Modern Horizons 3 is a set designed specifically with the Modern set in mind, with new powerful designs and reprints of classic cards that will skip Standard and Pioneer and enter Modern directly. It's no wonder, therefore, that the precons for Modern Horizons 3 are for Commander and not Modern. Ha ha ha. You know, since Modern Horizons 3 is considered a premium set, these precons are intended to be comparable to the precons for other premium sets, such as Commander Masters, rather than those of a standard set. But just how well do these precons stack up to their hefty price tag? How do they compare to other kinds of precons? And how well designed and fun to play are each of these precon decks? All these questions and more will be answered in this video, and that is what's in store. Please note that this video is a review exclusively of the Modern Horizons 3 Commander decks. If you would like to know whether or not it is worth it to buy Modern Horizons 3, the actual set, you will need to wait until launch of that product. Whoa, I am actually giving away 3 booster boxes of Modern Horizons 3 plus 3 mystery booster boxes, not mystery booster boxes, but surprise, retro, vintage, not that far vintage, but somewhat vintage booster boxes on my next Whatnot stream to celebrate Modern Horizons 3 this June 15th at 3 p.m. Pacific. And I'm also giving you $15 to spend however you want in my Whatnot store. Just go to www.whatnot.com/invite/Tolarian College and you will get $15 to spend in my store. I'll have lots of cool items and memorabilia there. And also you might walk away with one of these 3 booster boxes of Modern Horizons 3 or one of the other surprise booster boxes that I'll be giving away this June 15th at 3 p.m. Pacific. I hope very much to see you there. And now, let's talk Commander decks. A Modern Horizons Commander deck contains the following. One ready-to-play right out of the box 100-card deck, which itself includes 1 traditional foil commander, 1 traditional foil alternate commander, and 13 brand new Magic card designs. There is also a foil-etched thick display commander, 10 double-sided tokens, 1 Modern Horizons 3 collector booster sample pack, 1 quote-unquote deck box, 1 cardboard life wheel, and 1 strategy insert telling you how to pilot the deck. Given that this is more or less the exact same contents as any other Commander precon that sells for $40, one might assume that the price on these would also be $40 to $45, though sadly that is not exactly the case. The price on these precons varies widely, not just depending on where you purchase them, but from precon to precon as well. I suppose that's what you get when there's no stated MSRP. Creative Energy, the Jeskai Energy precon, is pre-selling for $47.74, or $135.53 for the collector's edition version. Graveyard Overdrive, the Jund Goyf precon, is pre-selling for $48.85. The collector's edition of that is selling for $171.14. In contrast to those two, Tricky Terrain, the Simic Land types precon, is pre-selling for $70.41, or $183.86 for the collector's edition. And Eldrazi Incursion, the Rainbow Eldrazi precon, is selling for $140.65, and that is not the collector's edition price. That's for the non-premium version. If you want the premium collector's edition, as of the filming of this video, you'll have to shell out $429. $430 for a foiled-out, pre-constructed deck is an absolutely absurd price. Even the collector's edition versions of the Warhammer 40k decks, considered exorbitantly expensive at the time, are currently only going for between $130 and $190. The most expensive Warhammer 40k collector's edition precon is just $50 more expensive than the ordinary, non-premium version of the Eldrazi Incursion precon. What in the flying spaghetti monster tax is this? With the price of one particular Precon being tall enough to reach the blind eternities and the price of two other Precons sitting below the comparatively modest $50 threshold, it's not clear how much these decks were actually supposed to cost. There's no way of knowing for sure, but my suspicion is that these Precons were intended for the $50 price tag. But the land types and Eldrazi Precons are priced higher because the other two decks are somewhat underwhelming. More on that in a moment. Comparing these Precons to the Precons for Commander Masters, the price is fairly similar. Currently, two of the Commander Masters Precons, Abzan Enchantments and Jeskai Planeswalkers, go for $44 and $40 respectively. The Sliver Swarm Precon holds a price tag similar to Tricky Terrain at $79, while the colorless Eldrazi Precon beats out the Modern Horizons 3 Eldrazi Precon with a price of $159. By comparison, all four Precons from both Outlaws of Thunder Junction and Murders at Karlov Manor currently go for less than $40 a piece. Lost Caverns of Ixalan's Commander decks is the exception to this rule, with the Naya Dinosaurs and Orzhov Vampires Precons coming in at $118 and $79 respectively, while the Grixis Pirates Precon would cost you $45. And oh my god, are you kidding me? Simic Merfolk is just $29.99? That was the best deck of the four, come on! So were these supposed to be $50 decks? Like, was the idea these are $50 decks and then the Eldrazi one and the Tricky Terrain one are so popular and in so much demand that they're being charged these exorbitant prices of $70 and over $100 for a single Precon? Is that what happened here? Or were these supposed to be $70, maybe even $80 decks, but the other two, they're not of much interest to players or as much interest to players, so stores are selling them off at $50? There's no way to know without an MSRP. This is just ridiculous at this point. Just think for a moment, as a consumer, what it means if these were all supposed to be $50 decks, but Wizards of the Coast, as the company selling you those decks, doesn't want to take responsibility for their product, wants to omit MSRP, and just let the secondary market jack up the price from $50 to $170? If you are having discrepancies like this in the pricing and selling of your products, then there are steps you can take. It's not easy and it's not perfect, but it is worth it as a company to protect your customers from this level of gouging. It's absurd. And I can't believe people are going to pay it, regardless of what grade I give it or what cards it contains in this video. Nonetheless, the price that these Precons are going for is fairly similar to that of the Commander Masters Precons from just a few months ago. And we all know how well received those turned out to be. Still, that is not to say that these decks are not well constructed or that there is not cards of value within them. Let's take a look at the financial value of these decks and also how well they play and how well they were built. If you were to purchase the singles for these decks at the lowest possible price, as of the filming of this video, Graveyard Overdrive would cost you $194.77. Creative Energy, $171.84. Eldrazi Incursion, $244.67. And Tricky Terrain, $299.49. As always, these prices are pre-order, taken from the lowest market price one day prior to launch. Not only will these values go down the moment the decks hit shelves, but there's a very good chance they are particularly high due to the fact that, well, two of these decks have a particularly high price on the secondary market. But what if we were to eliminate the bulk? Eliminate all cards not worth even $1. How much value would be left? Creative Energy has only 37 cards out of 100 worth $1 or more, bringing its total non-bulk value to $157.82. The top of the list is Goldspan Dragon, a $15 and change card, and Akroma's Will, a nearly $14 card. Much of the rest of these reprints feel more in line with a non-premium Commander Precon, though that's not to say I'm unhappy to see inclusions like Farewell, Aetherworks Marvel, or even cards like Mystic Gate and Adarkar Wastes in the mana base. Though I do feel the mana base could have used a lot more, as I'll cover in just a moment. The Creative Energy deck is a significant improvement on an Energy Matters Precon, such as we previously saw with the Fallout Commander decks. The Face Commander is fantastic and highly synergistic with the deck's game plan. There are lots of excellent energy enablers and a few few high-impact payoffs. The interaction suite is decent thanks to Swords to Plowshares and a trio of Wraths, including the notorious Sunfall. The curve is a bit top-heavy, but that's actually a good thing if you have an Aetherworks Marvel in play. While the deck is more synergistic than the Fallout Energy deck, there are still some strange inclusions that feel off-theme. The backup commander doesn't directly interact with energy, for example. Though Proliferate is certainly a good mechanic to pair with energy cards, there's also a weird tokens theme lumped in with the rest of the deck that seems to be intended to support the backup commander's Proliferate ability. If you combine this deck with the Fallout Energy Precon, you would create one complete and focused energy precon. The mana base here is pretty rough, though, with a whopping 20 basic lands, particularly egregious when you compare it to the two-color precon that only has 7 basic lands. The trio of Pain lands is a nice addition to the mana base, but it would have been great to see 1 or 2 more cycles of non-basics to round out the mana base. Graveyard Overdrive would still have 39 out of 100 cards worth $1 or more, providing a total non-bulk value of $179.28. The most valuable card inclusion being the Reaver Cleaver at $14.92, followed by Final Act at $12.32, and both Selvala, Heart of the Wilds, and Archon of Cruelty at approximately $10 each. Given the value within this collection of cards, it's actually pretty surprising that Tarmogoyf itself was not included in this, the Lurgoyf deck, because Tarmogoyf has dropped down to being only a $10 card and prime for reprinting in a commander precon such as this. In terms of gameplay, Graveyard Overdrive is very disappointing. The deck ostensibly is designed around Lurgoyfs, but only contains 6 total Lurgoyf cards and 1 sad little shapeshifter to put into play off of its face commander's ability. There's not even a Tarmogoyf reprint in this deck. Why not? I don't know. Maybe they were worried the entrenched players this deck was designed for would confuse Tarmogoyf with the Tarmogoyf tokens in the precon. The rest of the deck is a split between a vague Graveyard Synergy deck and a generic value deck. The result is that Graveyard Overdrive is unfocused and not really built to succeed in the context of a commander game. This precon is going to need a lot of upgrades to be a playable commander deck. I will talk which of these decks are my first, second, and third picks in a moment, but spoiler alert, this is without a doubt my 4th pick and is going to carry with it the waiver that I really don't recommend you pick it up at all. It's ultimately a very bad, underwhelming design. The Tricky Terrain deck has 42 out of 100 cards worth $1 or more, with a total non-bulk value of $282.28, in no small part due to the fact that this deck has Planar Nexus, a card that's selling for $44.07. But there's other big-ticket cards as well here, such as Talon, Gates of Madara, Apex Devastator, Vesuva, and even Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath. The fact that this is a commander precon with cards such as Dark Depths and Yavimaya, Cradle of Growth included within it really does make a reasonable argument that these are premium quality commander precons. In terms of construction, Tricky Terrain is the most cohesive and interesting deck of the 4. A Simic Lands deck is not new ground, but a Simic deck that is particularly focused on non-basic land types is. It's actually pretty cool to see a deck built around the many different non-basic land types Magic has seen over the years, from recent additions like Caves and Deserts, to longtime favorites like Locuses and the Urza lands. The face commander is cheap and has the fantastic enter the battlefield and attacks Titan ability templating that makes for a high-impact creature in commander. The deck has good interaction for all kinds of cards, with the best blue spot removal, counterspell, all-purpose removal, and several strong board wipe adjacent cards. It also has strong card draw and ramp, including all 3 sizes of Growth Spiral, and a powerful top end to pay you off for all that ramping. If I did have one critique of this deck, it's that the game plan is not necessarily the most new player friendly, since the distinction between non-basic land types and the relevance of those types is not the most intuitive to a player who hasn't been around for a while. But in terms of actual gameplay, this deck is my pick for both the strongest and most interesting. Even the Guild Gate, which looks out of place at first glance, fits into the theme of non-basic land types. I would have loved to see a Maze's End in the deck list, but that is an easy upgrade if you want to add it. Eldrazi Incursion has 46 out of 100 cards worth $1 or more, bringing its total non-bulk value to $227.11. While the biggest ticket item here is indeed a new card design, there's some hefty reprints like Eldrazi Conscription and Eldrazi Monument, not to mention Morophon the Boundless, All is Dust, and one of the better 5-color mana bases we've seen. It really is a shame that Eye of Ugin was not included here, but I suppose they're saving that for the third Eldrazi Precon that's inevitably going to hit shelves. It's hard not to compare the Eldrazi Incursion directly to Eldrazi Unbound, the only other Eldrazi Commander Precon, and one of the strongest Precons of all time. Feel free to check out my top 5 Precons video. Eldrazi Incursion is not as powerful as Eldrazi Unbound, in part because its commander is not as strong, but this is still a very good Precon. The deck gets moving faster and has access to all 5 colors of mana rather than no colors of mana. The mana base is fantastic as far as 5-color Precons go, with very few tap lands and, crucially, all 10 pain lands. Wow. The interaction is good despite mostly relying on Eldrazi-flavored removal. With so many high-power creatures, this deck makes good use of the green card draw spells included within. This really is a very good Precon, though I would hesitate to say it is $140 good. I consider it to maybe be half a step behind the Simic Precon, and certainly a significant improvement over the other two. Ranking these decks based purely on deck construction, Tricky Terrain would be my first pick. My second pick, and again we are talking with price aside, is indeed Eldrazi Incursion, with Creative Energy at number 3. I think the Creative Energy deck is really solid, and luckily not being sold for too much more than a standard Precon. Graveyard Overdrive is, as I mentioned earlier, dead last, and I would not recommend anyone purchase it unless they are a diehard fan of constructed Jund decks, and even then I highly recommend you only buy the deck with the purpose of retooling it into something more coherent. So both Tricky Terrain and Eldrazi Incursion are the top 2 picks, but unfortunately once we factor in their price tags, especially in regards to Eldrazi Incursion, we end up with a lot of bad feels to say the least, and as you'll see in a moment, some pretty bad overall grades. I will not be reviewing the premium commander decks in this series. I could not get a hold of them anyway. They were not at any of my local game stores because none of my local game stores are premium stores. We've talked before about how there's often only one premium store for a very large range of the map, and some areas of the world have none. Well, that's the only place to get the super expensive premium ones. Do they curl? Do the foils look good? I'd love to have opened it up and shown it to you on camera, but I can't find them, and I'm not paying $400 for this button, that, who cares, that and button foil. I'm just not, and I don't think you should either. Final conclusion? With the exception of Graveyard Overdrive, Modern Horizons 3 commander decks are well constructed and filled with powerful cards for players new and old to both Commander and Magic the Gathering. At $50 each, the grade is an A, with Tricky Terrain getting higher marks at A+, and Creative Energy a slight minus. But I love all three of these decks and would enjoy being given any one of them or picking any one of them up for $50. I will say that I'm disappointed severely in Graveyard Overdrive, and even at $50, it's barely acceptable at a C-. What grade do these decks get at above $50 each? If you're paying $60 for them, what grade are they? $70? $90? $125? What do you want me to say here? How about this? Any one of these decks selling for over $80 is a fail. Doesn't matter how well built it is. That isn't a grade reflecting deck quality or construction, but it is a grade reflecting the very pricing structure of Magic the Gathering in 2024, as well as the relationship that Wizards of the Coast has with its customers. This is the Premium Deck Series, an old product by Wizards of the Coast. I actually did a retro review on it here. These are 60-card decks, not 100, but they were offered entirely in foil with, in many cases, some great cards. This one was just mono red, but they're Graveborn, they're slivers. My sliver deck comes from me buying this, and the price on these was not $400 or even $100. It was $40 back when they had an MSRP. Yeah, it was a long time ago, and inflation, I suppose, but I don't feel that the price on these products correlates with inflation, nor have I ever. I don't have an easy solution, but it's maybe not my job to have that solution. I think my job is to point out a problem. And I feel that the pricing of premium and, well, there is no non-premium. This is premium and ultra-premium products of Wizards of the Coast. I feel that there is a problem there. I feel that the fact that there is not any non-premium version of these is a problem. Who's picking them up? Maybe you. I do hope this video has been of some help to you in making that decision about whether or not to pick them up. And I do hope very much you will join me on my next Whatnot stream. What a great energy to go into the sponsor read. Hey, I'm giving away 3 of these. Free is worth it. I'm going to talk about if it's worth it financially when these launch next week, but I would like to give 3 boxes of this away to people. Don't have to spend anything, just come hang out in my Whatnot stream. And if you would like to buy something, give you a $15 credit. Pick up some packs, put it towards a commander deck, whatever you like. www.whatnot.com/invite/Tolarian College. This 15th at 3 p.m. Pacific, I'll be giving away 3 booster boxes of Modern Horizons 3, shipped anywhere in the world, and 3 surprise booster boxes of some old sets that I love as well. I hope very much to see you there.